not do Pontiacs anymore, what's your second choice? Do you have another kind
There is no other choice.
Okay.
It'll be used Pontiacs from here on out.
So I love your passion. You know every facet of not only the car, the people who made the movie. It's fascinating. Welcome to the episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Today we're featuring yet another movie car. You know, there's been a tremendous interest in cars from films in the last few years. On this show we've done the Batmobile and we've done the DeLorean from Back to the Future and just a couple of others. This car was featured in a 2002 film called XXx starring Vin Diesel. It's the 1967 XXx GTO. It's called the Flame Car. And it's got all kinds of trick stuff, and the guys that collect these things are just fanatic, like our friend Thom Sherwood. Tom, come on in. So how long have you had this thing?
I've owned this car now since 2005.
Okay. Now, were you like a young man and you just blown away by the movie? You had to have that car?
A little.
Were you mesmerized by it when you saw the movie?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I've been a Pontiac fan all my life. I've owned nothing but Pontiacs.
Really?
And yes, nothing but Pontiacs. And when I first saw the trailer for this film in the theaters in the summer of 2002, this is a year after the first Fast and Furious movie came out, sitting in the theater watching the trailer for XXx, and I see this Pontiac GTO on the screen shooting rockets towards the camera, and I jump up and I yell, 67 GTO!
Right.
And of course everybody in the theater looks at me like, who's this crazy guy?
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, and from that moment I thought, wow, this is a pretty neat film to see, you know, a GTO actually being used in a modern day film.
From that point, did you seek to acquire this car? Did you try to buy one like it and convert one? I mean, how did the process work?
Well, the process began actually through my involvement with the Pontiac Oakland Club International. For many years, I've been a member for 38 years or so now.
Right.
And involved with the local chapter in Tucson, Arizona, and a buddy of mine and I were writing a movie review column in which we would find movies that had Pontiacs in them. Of course, this is
funny. Just review movies that have Pontiacs.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. If there was a Pontiac in it,
Right.
we'd review it. And the name of this movie review column was called Rally Reels, which is kind of a takeoff on
Right.
the optional rally wheels that were available.
Oh,
of course,
okay. Yeah, I can see that. Sure.
Exactly. And so we would find these movies and we would rate them on a scale of 1 to 5 lug nuts.
I see.
And have a lot of fun with this
1
movie.
to 8 because Pontiac had the famous
8-lug wheels.
8-lug wheels.
Right,
Yeah.
well-
I'm surprised you didn't really go for the because that to me is one of the greatest wheels of all time. That 8-lug
It is.
Pontiac
The Kelsey
wheel.
Hayes aluminum
Yeah.
brake job wheel that was
Came out in
offered.
59, I think. First
59, 60,
Yeah,
61 you
yeah.
start seeing them,
Okay.
and then through I think 68 on the full-size Pontiacs, those 8-lug wheels are available.
Now, is acting count at all? Is just how many times a Pontiac is seen in the film? Like it's only seen once, does it get a lower rating? Like a good movie
Yes.
with a Pontiac that once gets a low rating than a really bad movie with a lot of Pontiacs.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little subjective in that regard.
Really?
It is very subjective, but of course, you know, XXx, because this is such an iconic car
Right.
used as the hero vehicle at the end of the film, it of course is going to get 5 lugs, and the fact that I own it, of course, I can now give it 5 lugs. And
how many times did you see the movie?
well, I saw it, of course, on opening night.
Right.
Probably another 2 or 3 times, of course, while it was still in the theaters for the 3-month run that it was in theaters
Right.
on the end of 2002. But then, of course, since then, I've watched the DVD countless times.
Right. Now, did you have a date when you went to the movie, or did you go by yourself?
I was with a bunch of buddies originally, but I think at opening night I was probably by myself at that point.
I mean, I guess when I'm asking, people you're with, are they as enthusiastic about this as you are? Did they think you're crazy? I don't think you're crazy because I'm a car guy.
You're a car guy.
But
I'm a car
I understand.
guy.
I'm always amused by people who just don't get it. You know, they're
Some
with
people
someone
get it.
who
You
just
know,
don't.
there's many people who are Vin Diesel fans and will go to see a movie because of Vin Diesel. There's many, just as many or more people that will go to see a movie, be it with Vin Diesel or others, because of the cars.
Right.
And this is a perfect example of how a car simply appearing in a trailer can sell a couple tickets.
Sure,
and so
okay.
Hollywood needs to learn from that example.
Yes, they do need to learn from that example. They need to put more Pontiacs to get that 5-lug review, even though the best wheel is the 8-lug. Okay.
Exactly.
All right, let's go to how you tracked it. Now, how does one go about, from that day forward, did you seek it out, or did it come by chance, or did you hear from? How did you find out about the car?
In my course of researching the car for the movie review column, I was able to gain an amazing amount of information about the cars, plural, cars that were built for the film.
And how many of replicas like this were built for the film?
For this particular film, there were 5 identical driving copies made, plus a 6th non-driving rig car that were made. So in my research, I was able to learn about how all those cars were utilized within the movie, and what had happened to them after the filming completed in 2002. So at that point, I then did my research and contacted a couple people, and I found out basically what had happened to the various cars.
So what had happened? They got sold to other people before you got there?
Well, of those 5 cars, 2 of them were then offered for sale on eBay through Revolution Studios, and Revolution had contracted with a third-party company to sell a lot of the props, the wardrobe, and the vehicles on eBay through that. And in the course of that auction, 2 of the 5 cars were sold. They were bought by a young fellow in Malibu, California. Bought him as an investment, and so he was the actual first private owner after the movie, including this, the flame car.
Oh, okay. So you got this from him?
Correct.
Now, did he then advertise him, or you sort of sought him out and then bought it from him?
Again, in my research for this, I made contact with him and meet him, arrange a photo shoot of the cars. He was impressed with my knowledge of the cars themselves and the movie. Stayed in touch with him, and when the sequel to the movie xXx 2 State of the Union came out in 2005, 3 years later, he then decided he wanted to sell his cars on, he wanted to sell the first of the 2 cars at Barrett-Jackson. He then hired me to sell that first car for him at Barrett-Jackson in 2005. And that was what was called stunt car number 1. So I drove that across the auction block for him in 2005. And then a couple months later, when the actual sequel was released in the theaters, he decided he wanted to sell this, the flame car. He hired me then to offer that on eBay. Long story short, I ended up being the high bidder.
And how rough was it when you got it? Was it running? Was it okay? Or did you have to do a tremendous amount of work to get it?
Actually, the way you see it now is pretty much the way this car remained. This car was pretty much pulled off the set. The last time you see it in the end of xXx1 on the bridge, this Charles Bridge in Prague, this is pretty much the way it looked. It still had retained the original tires. The paint, as you see, is still the original paint for the most part. And it held up pretty well overall.
I know it's a convertible now, but this wasn't always a convertible.
A lot of people assume that it is a convertible, and I have to correct people. All 5 of the cars that were involved with xXx, the 5 driving cars, were all hardtop cars originally. And as you look at the details, those of you who are interested or are knowledgeable with mid-sized Pontiac or General Motors hardtop cars will recognize that the shape here is completely unique to a hardtop as opposed to a convertible car. So you can tell that this car was originally a hardtop.
Now, were they all GTOs, or were some, Pontiac Le Mans or Tempest?
This particular car, as were 2 other of the 5 cars, are real GTOs. And so we've got a real, what's called a 242 code VIN number under the hood of this car that proves that this is a real GTO. The other 2 cars of the 5 were Le Mans, indeed, that were cloned to look like a GTO.
Okay. Well, let's open the hood. Let's start at the front of the car here. And
sure.
So it's a 389. Does it have tri-power?
No. Well, of course, in 389s, the last year for the 389 was 1966.
Oh, that's right.
This being a 67 would be a 400 with a quadrojet, and it still is the original numbers matching YS code 67 400 block engine, as you can see here.
Okay.
And as you get some information, as you scan through looking under the hood here, you can see all sorts of really crazy things going on that aren't quite stock.
Now, what is this here?
This is what's called an accumulator. And you've got a pair of these, and these actually are for the functioning of the rockets that fire out of the headlights. So as you peer down the
Oh, I see.
yeah, way down there.
Yeah.
As you peer down the headlight openings there, you see these tubes. There's a mechanical solenoid valve in there, but these actuators are filled with up to 200 psi of compressed air. With when they're triggered, it would basically push a flare out through a breakaway lens to enable that gag or stunt to be performed on screen. So this, one of the things I have to kind of accentuate here is that this car actually allowed all the stunts that you see in the film to happen. None of that stuff was CGI. None of it was computer generated. It was all real. So all the things that you see happen in the film happened because of real effects that were part of what John Fraser's crew worked to install on this particular car. So
Yeah,
that's
to me,
what's
that's
unique.
what makes it fun. You know, I watch the Bourne Identity films. It's really going down the stairs. It's really going. I hate any film where people go, whoa! You know, it's just so phony. It just, you know, the whole CGI. It goes hundreds of feet in the air and it lands, and you know, the suspension doesn't collapse or any of that.
No.
It's kind of fun. Now, what was Vin Diesel's car? Was he a detective? Why did he have a car with all this stuff on it?
In the movie, he plays Xander Cage, and Xander Cage is kind of a counterculture, extreme athlete guy who gets on the wrong side of the law and is recruited by the NSA, the National Security Agency.
Of course.
Yeah,
As often happens.
natural chain of action there.
So it's a true story, basically.
Yeah, gets recruited to become a secret agent and infiltrate a whole bunch of bad guys over in Europe.
All right. Okay.
So this car is actually, if you want to think of it as the equivalent of James Bond's Aston Martin from Goldfinger as it was introduced there. Think of the GTO flame car as Xander Cage's secret agent gadget car.
Yeah, like the, okay. And this actually shoots flame.
Yeah. The flamethrower is actually a functional thing that you see in the film. Again, none of that is CGI.
Right.
You can see the supply line for the fuel, the igniter for that, and then you notice, of course, the scorch marks on the hood scoop.
Right.
As I mentioned here, we have the original YS code 335 horsepower Pontiac V8, and you'll notice there's the VIN tag along the firewall that proves it is indeed a 242 code GTO, and I wanted to clarify that because a lot of people are assuming that this was Le Mans that has been dolled up. Some of the other things that you can see, of course, you know, the plumbing for the flamethrower, the valves, the accumulators for the rocket launcher, the valves for the pneumatic systems, with including the launching the roof off the car. We'll show that more of that in just a moment here. So there's some really kind of unique stuff that this is all installed by John Fraser's crew. John, of course, is just right up the street here near Sun Valley, and those guys have been wonderful to work with and help document the car and help with some of the cosmetic restoration I've been doing recently on the car to get it ready for showing. And
now, do the other 4 cars still exist?
The other 4 cars still exist, yes.
Okay, ready to shut this? Okay. Is this probably the most active one?
It is, yeah. For a while, Pontiac division had what was called the Hero car. They had that on display as part of their GM collection. And that was unfortunately sold off from their collection in 2008 when they went through their big bankruptcy there. So that ended up in private hands. And I actually ended up buying one of the other cars as well. So I have 2 of these in my collection. I own stunt car number 2, and I have the flame car.
All right, let's move back here. I mean, this is a whole array of gadgets here. And before we get to the interior, I'm not sure if the cameras can pick this up, but the paint changes color, doesn't it, when you walk around depending on the light?
Exactly.
It appears purple, now it's sort of blue on this side.
Exactly. What this is a brand new technology that was introduced in 2001, and as far as we know, this was the first time that was used on a movie car. It was technology, color shifting technology developed by DuPont, chrome illusion. The actual color itself is called indigo blackberry prism.
Of course.
Yeah, it just make up a name to describe the fact that it does indeed shift from the red to blue. Some people see some black and purple in there, and it's a little bit of everything in that spectrum, but it's kind of neat technology.
Kind of a Rorschach test, depending on what you see.
But the director, Rob Cohen, specifically wanted that because it was new technology and thought it would be a little on the stealthy side.
Right. Oh, very cool. All right. Now, what's certainly not stealth is the dashboard. It appears to have every possible gauge you can imagine. Even that's a real old-fashioned radar kind of deal down there, isn't it? I mean, I remember seeing that almost same thing in one of the James Bond movies when he was in Japan.
Yeah.
And the console opens, and it's a round, like sonar
The round
kind of
blinky
deal.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the blinky thing. Exactly.
The round blinky thing.
Round blinky thing.
Yeah, the dashboard, of course, is supposed to look kind of this ragtag, crazy amalgamation of bits and pieces. Because of the storyline, the car was taken from a stock form to this crazy secret agent gadget car overnight. So they really didn't have time to dress it up according to the storyline.
Right.
So it's not going to be as clean as a Knight Rider car or a DeLorean Back to the Future type of car. You're going to see all the exposed wires and craziness here. So that's, and the handwritten labels and things like that. That's why you're going to see all this craziness there.
And there's some sort of animation going on. What's that?
Yeah, no, that's animation that basically is showing their target has been acquired, the submarine that they're chasing down at the end of the film. The film shows.
Well, how does a car chase a submarine? I don't.
Very carefully.
I don't. Yeah, I was going to say that seems to be pretty tricky. Okay.
They're just basically trying to chase this thing down parallel as they're driving through the countryside.
Right
in the Czech Republic, where all of this was filmed.
Right.
There, and Vin's character, of course, Xander Cage, his object is to get from the car onto the submarine to disable it at the end of the film.
Gotcha.
So this car is his steed that actually allows him to become the hero. So we've got all these crazy things here going on in the dash, all the pre-programmed lights, again, more blinky things there, and it's all adjustable. Again, the special effects guys did a wonderful job of being able to make this appear various insert shots during the course of the movie where you see some of these things. Some of them weren't maybe seen for more than a split second, but others were featured rather prominently.
And what's looks like an inflatable.
Yeah, this is, of course, also very pivotal within the film. This is the parasail that Vin uses at the end of the movie to eject himself. And what's really cool here, as you pull the Velcro away, you have the wonderful red, white, and blue American flag
We can't
parachute.
get more stealthy than that.
Yeah, I mean, standing out.
So that's like a parachute, a parasail.
Exactly. He straps himself in to this after the roof has been ejected, and that will allow himself to pull the ripcord, and that pulls him out of the seat.
Okay. That's leading him to the submarine.
Submarine, exactly. But you can see some of the other really cool features that are on the car here.
Well, quick question. Why is it in the passenger seat? Isn't he driving the car? I mean, how does he get... Seems like if it was here, he just put
You
it
would
on.
think, yes. Earlier in the film, he is driving. There's a pivotal scene where you see his female companion, which is Asia Argento. She's playing a character named Yelena. They have to switch seats because he's figured out a way to disable this car. He knows that he's had his crew outfit the car overnight. He has her flip through the manual. This is the actual manual from the film here, where you see all the crazy gadgets and things which have been installed by the NSA crew. And he realizes as he concocts the plan that he's got the weapons, he's got the parasail, he figures he could eject the roof, and so he straps himself in. And the other thing is he has the buttons to utilize the weapons that are in the back seat of the car.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, police in L.A. love seeing this kind of stuff in the back seat of a car. Yeah.
Got to be a little careful with this stuff. These are actual weapons here, but
they are. Okay.
Yeah, but what you don't see, unfortunately, we're missing the harpoon gun here, which is part of his plan that he utilizes to disable the Ahab submarine.
Right, so you need a harpoon gun.
You need a harpoon gun. You need to be able to stand up with a parasail, hold the harpoon gun, rip the cord on the thing, be pulled up out of the car, and next thing you know, you're flying above the Ahab submarine in the Vltava River in the Czech Republic.
Yeah,
so it's all very natural.
Just the idea that the submarine is in a river. I don't know why That strikes me as funny. I mean, the rivers are about, okay, the submarine. Okay, but sure. All right, good. Okay, let's flip this back. Put those away in case the cops come around.
Yeah, I got to watch out for the popos.
Now, why are these shock towers? Are the shocks?
These aren't actually shock towers. This is part, again, of the special effects equipment that was installed for this, specifically for the guy where the roof comes off. These are what are called bimbas. They're highly compressed air that will push these cylinders up about 6 inches, as well as a pair of latches up here.
Right.
As the car's driving along, when those are released, the roof will come up 6 inches, the wind catches it and basically peels it off, just like a fighter jet canopy being ejected. So this is all, again, part of the practical special effects that were built into this car.
I love the fact that they actually work to get all these things to work. I give them a try. I mean, I lost interest in these kind of films when the CGI stuff came in, because then it got ridiculous. I mean, you know, the fact that it's a stunt, just the fact that the car can still physically do it is kind of cool. I mean, I like that part of it. I hate it when it's just, you know, it defies the laws of physics and it's not possible.
I think props go to Rob Cohen, the director of the film, for having that vision and doing as much of the special effects and the stunts real as possible.
So have you met any of the stars, the actual stars of the film, Vin and the young lady who starred in it as well?
Yeah, I've actually met Vin Diesel and Sam Jackson and Ice Cube that were all in the series.
Oh, that's right, yeah, that's right.
Sam Jackson is part of the whole XXX universe, plays Xander Cage's handler. But I was able to get a chance to meet them and got them autographed the underside of the trunk. We can show that. And it's always fun whenever I show this underside of the trunk lid to people, especially the young folks, the young fans. As soon as they see Vin Diesel's autograph, they just bring out their cell phones and snap. They get a real charge out of that.
Very cool.
Yeah. So Vin Diesel, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, let's see, what else have we got? Other than that, it's pretty much a stock GTO, isn't it? Obviously, the door handles have been shaved.
Right. That's part of the pockets that you see on the interior here are actually solenoids that will flip the handles to open the doors.
It's amazing they went to this much effort, because, I mean, to do this is a lot of work, to shave these, you know, to do it on 5 cars.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, you want to talk about the crew that built this. It was a combination of joint effort between John Fraser's special effects and, of course, Eddie Paul. And I believe you know Eddie Paul.
I know Eddie. You know, Eddie died a couple of years ago. Eddie used to come by here all the time, and we used to go to his shop. Yeah, he built a lot of movie cars and things.
He did. He was responsible. One of his earliest projects, of course, was for Grease, and built the pair of Mercuries for the movie Grease.
That's right.
And of course, did all the cars for the first Fast and Furious film and the second Fast and Furious.
Right.
So he's got quite a wonderful dossier. Yeah. And he saw the 5 cars, driving cars, plus the 6 rig car go through his shop for paint and body work, and was a wonderful guy. Got to know him, and I was one of the very last people to actually speak with him before he died in 2017, but just a really wonderful fellow.
Yeah, he died quite young, too.
Quite young. He had a really wonderful career ahead of him, actually doing reproduction Duesenbergs in Texas was one of his projects that he was going to do.
I do remember that. Very cool. Well, does this actually drive? Can we take it for a run?
I'd love to take you for a drive in this thing, yeah.
Let's give it a shot.
Okay, cool.
Let's fight crime. Starts right up. All right, let's fight crime. Where's that submarine? Should be in the LA River. Now, did somebody disconnect the power booster on the brake? Because the car just cut in front of me, and I realized, boy, I have to step on this brake.
Yeah, you got to mash the gas, the brake pedal rather, because this car was actually built without power brakes.
Oh, it was built without power.
Yeah, I've got the build sheet from courtesy of Pontiac Historic Services, and this car.
Did you find the original owner, the guy who bought it?
No, I would love to, but I've got the original California plate. This car was originally built in the built and sold in the San Francisco area.
Right.
And it was originally Montreux blue as a color. You see that under the trunk lid of the car. Right. You see the original color multiple places around the car. there, and it was built with a 400, of course, the base quadrojet 4-barrel, 335 horsepower, YS code, 400 Pontiac V8. No power steering, excuse me, no power brakes, but it does have power steering. Right. It does have air conditioning.
It actually drives very nicely.
It does. It's a solid car. The mileage isn't too high on this thing. So they started with a fairly good car.
Now, is this a car you would ever sell, or is this a keeper?
Oh, it's definitely a keeper. I've invested, I just can't say, just countless of hundreds or thousands of hours interviewing literally 100 people associated with the...
Now, are there other cars that you want? Were there other movie cars that you saw over the years you lusted for, couldn't get those?
Not at all, and it wasn't a situation...
Well, it's fine because the movie, certainly Batman, hugely popular, Knight Rider, hugely popular, DeLorean, hugely popular. This movie did okay, but it didn't seem like that big a cult film. Like most people,
it has become more of a cult film over time, and after the more it's been airing on the cable stations, it's becoming more and more popular.
Now, did your dad drive a Pontiac? Your mom drive a Pontiac? I mean, where does that come from?
That actually was a thing that I started when I was in high school. I just fell in love with the Pontiac styling, and in particular, I really love 71 Pontiac GTO, which doesn't look a whole bunch like the 67 GTO here.
Yeah, I like the 65.
65 is a beautiful year as well. I love the 65s too, but I actually convinced my parents to buy a 72 Le Mans station wagon when I was still in high school. So that was technically my first Pontiac.
See, when I was a kid, Pontiac was sort of the frumpy division. And then when they come out with the wide track thing in '59, I guess right after that DeLorean stepped in, then it became the performance division of General Motors, right under Corvette, you know?
Exactly, yeah. Pontiac's performance really started in '57 with the release of the Bonneville.
That's right, it was fuel injected.
Fuel injected. The 661 cars which Pontiac built in 1957 really set the course for where Pontiac wanted to go in the future. And DeLorean at that time, of course, was working under Pete Estes as an assistant engineer, and worked quite a bit to develop the whole engineering with the wide track theme, with all of that. Did a wonderful job.
And I have a Pontiac you would like. I'm doing it right now, a Pontiac Sprint. It is a Firebird with a 6-cylinder, but rare because most of them were the 1-barrel carburetor, 165 horse. This one's got the quadrojet. It's got the
overhead cam 6 Sprint. Yeah, it's going to be rated at 215 horsepower with a 250 cubic inch overhead cam 6.
Right.
It's a great motor, and that was something that John DeLorean designed, and holds the patent on that with the gear-driven camshaft. It's a great motor.
Not gear-driven.
The belt-driven. Yeah, you're right.
Camshaft.
You're right.
Yeah, and I remember because he was enamored of the XKE. He wanted to build a 6-cylinder road machine. And that's, the Barracuda, the Mustang, the regular Firebird, the Camaro, they all had the V8 in common. And he came out with this 6, and it wasn't an economy 6. Like mine, I'm the third owner of the one I've got now. But when the guy got finished ordering it, it cost just as much as a V8.
That's right.
So you go, I might as well get a V8. But to me, I love how light and nimble and high revving that the 6 is. It's kind of cool.
It's a great concept, and unfortunately it just didn't take off. It didn't catch on in terms of being a...
Well, to this day, it's hard to sell Americans a 6-cylinder engine.
Exactly.
I've got the Ford GT, and just with the 6, I have a V6, a piece of crap, and it's fast, it handles. It's a fantastic car, but people still think it should have a big, heavy V8 for some reason. But that's just an American thing.
It is. But yeah, as you said, DeLorean was very enamored with the whole European sports car thing, and was inspired to create a lot of that. There was some wonderful styling going on to complement that engineering, and some of the wonderful studio work that was going on. Jim Ewan in particular is a personal friend of mine who worked in the studio and did a lot with the Grand Prix and the Bonneville and the Catalina. He's retired now, living in Tucson, so we want to say hi to Jim Ewan as a retired Pontiac studio guy.
And of course, probably the biggest thing that ever happened to Pontiac I remember I bought the magazine, Car and Driver Race, a Pontiac GTO against a Ferrari GTO, and of course the Pontiac won.
You know, they used a stopwatch, said, oh, let's kind of hit it now.
Yeah. And I think it turned out that the Pontiac was a ringer. I think it had a 421
It was bobcatted, that's right.
And it did beat the, but that just shows you that back in those days, that's a foreign car, it's a Ferrari GTO. I mean, a car that's, the last one went for $75 million.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah, that 64 GTO that was in the test drive compared against the Ferrari GTO, it was later finally revealed by Jim Wangers to be a ringer. It had a 421 that had been bobcatted, totally decked out, and of course because the engine sides visually looked the same as the 389, visually you couldn't tell the difference.
Did Wangers have something to do with the song Little GTO?
Very much so.
Yeah, that's right. Did he hire a songwriter to write a song, or what was the deal?
Ronnie and the Daytonas.
Ronnie and the Daytonas, that's right.
Ronnie's a pretty cool guy. He was working for this, and they wanted to make sure that they could get the name GTO in that song as many times as possible. But Jim Wangers, of course, worked with a lot of the guys back in the day. Of course, with the Monkees, the Paul Revere and the Raiders. He did some great promotional work.
Carol Connors, I think that was her name. She wrote this Spring Little Cobra, I think. Wasn't she Carol Shelby's secretary or something?
I'm not sure of that story.
And I think he said, if the song becomes #1, I'll give you one. And it became #1. I just love the fact there's a whole generation of people have no idea what we're talking about right now. Because, you know, back in the 60s, the car was like the computer now. Every kid was into it. Even kids who knew nothing about cars pretended to know stuff because it was cool.
Exactly.
The cool guys had cars, and the songs are all about surfing and hot rodding and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the kids, I think, have learned to respect certain cars, and the Mustangs, the Camaros, the Firebirds, the Trans Ams, the Cudas. And one of the reasons why this particular car was chosen for xXx, and it has specifically to do with the Fast and Furious. The very first Fast and Furious was filmed a year before this movie came out, 2002. So the 2001 Fast and Furious movie, the first one, of course, Vin Diesel's character is Dominic Toretto. And in that, he's introducing his Charger, the big black Charger with that big honking supercharger, and pulls the wheelie and the whole thing. That particular scene made such an impact on the movie audiences in the theater back in 2001. They wanted to replicate that reveal, that whole thing. And so when Rob Cohen was talking about what kind of car should Xander Cage be driving in xXx, they thought, let's try to do that replica where we have that reveal, that classic American muscle car that really resonated with the American viewing audiences, and he nailed it. But the interesting trivia is that the car that Vin Diesel's character was to drive in this film was originally going to be a red 1972 GTO. But as the script developed, they wanted to have the roof come off to do the one gag where he stands up and shoots the harpoon gun. Well, they realized that a 66 or 67 GTO would be a much easier thing to physically slice the roof off on this body style than on the 72. So they changed it to a 67 GTO, and then they realized, wait a minute, we needed to make the parachute happen in the passenger seat of the car. So if you catch some of the details, you'll notice that on this particular car, in this particular seat that I'm seeing, seated in, the button to release the seat is indicating that this is a bucket seat that's supposed to be on that side of the car. So they goofed up. They actually built the parachute seat, the Velcro here, they actually built it originally to be on the left side, and then sometime they realized, wait a minute, it's got to be on this side of the car. So they just physically switched the seat to be over on the passenger side of the car. Interesting little trivia question.
Now, if you could not do Pontiacs anymore, what's your second choice? Do you have another kind?
There is no other choice. It'll be used Pontiacs from here on out. And General Motors needs to listen. We need to, okay, I'll take it back.
There's no other cars you're interested in?
No, I'll take that back.
Go ahead.
I would certainly take any of the cars in your collection. I would love to have a Lamborghini, like a Murcielago, perhaps an Aventador, any of the Lamborghini line. I'm just in love with the styling.
Oh, you like the newest stuff rather than the older stuff?
Well, I'll take any, like a De Tomaso Pantera, Mangusta.
Right.
I'll take any of those Ital Design.
Have you ever sat in a Pantera?
I've not sat in a Pantera.
I don't think you would fit.
No, I won't fit.
You have to sit like this.
Any like the Lotus Esprit, any of those wonderful Giugiaro type of designs.
Yeah.
I would love to own one of those, but I know I wouldn't fit.
What's your daily driver? It can't be this thing.
Obviously not. Being that there's no roof, we don't want to be driving every day, but I'm very proud to also be involved with the GMC truck line. So my daily driver is a 2004 GMC Sierra Denali with a Quadra steer.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, neat engineering that's done all four of the wheels steer. That's my daily driver, and of course I have other GTOs as well.
You don't want to get a wheel alignment on that, boy. That's got to be expensive.
Right. You notice in the back seat with the weapons there, and all those weapons are nested inside a piece of foam rubber.
Right.
When I first got this car, that piece of foam was missing. And I wondered what had happened to it. Obviously, it was a very unique piece with all the cutouts for the various weapons that you see when the seat flips over. And during the course of my interviews, talking to all the various people associated with the production of the movie, I got a chance to meet with the armorer who supplied all the weapons for the film, Michael Papik. And I asked Michael, whatever happened to that piece of foam rubber? He says, oh, we left that behind by accident in Prague. I said, by chance do you think that might still exist? He says, I doubt it. It's been 10 years. But long story short, I ended up doing some research. I found the name of the studio back there, and I traced down the guy. He had given me the first name of the fellow. His name was Peter. So I waited up late one night to call the guy who was at the studio back in Prague, and phone picks up, and strange voice. I couldn't tell if it was maybe Russian or the Czech language. And I said, hello, does anyone speak English? And the phone just goes blank. I don't hear anything. I don't know if I got hung up on or what. And a couple of minutes go by, and I hear a male voice that says, hello, may I help you? It says, I'm looking for somebody named Peter. My name is Peter. How can I help you? Peter, well, you're the guy I need to talk to. I'm the guy who has the xXx GTO, and I'm looking for this piece of foam rubber that had all these weapons from the 2002 movie xXx. He says, oh, no, I'm sorry, that's long gone. We've gotten rid of that. He says, well, just in case, if you want to look around, let me email you a picture of what it is I'm looking for. And of course, this piece of foam would be quite valuable to me. I want to have that for the car if it exists still at all. So I get back on the phone. I thanked him. I sent him an email with a picture of what I was looking for. I get back on the phone with the weapons guy in Hollywood. I said, hey, can you tell me where you left this piece of foam? Where I can tell this guy to look for this piece of foam and where maybe you have left it. He said, tell him to look in the machine gun vault for this piece of foam. And so I wrote back to the guy in Prague. I said, look in the machine gun vault for this piece of foam. 24 hours goes by, I check my email. I wake up, I check my email, and he says, Tom, you're a lucky man, we found your foam.
Oh, that's funny.
And he sends me a picture of this piece of foam on this drab olive green floor from this communist era machine gun vault from the movie studio back there. And I had to make a trip to go over get it, retrieve this foam, met Peter over there. So we call it.
Send it to you. You actually went there to get it.
We went to Prague to the filming locations for the movie. Picked up the phone, met Peter, and so we now call it the world's most expensive piece of foam rubber.
So did you take this to the movie premiere of xXx3? Where was that, in Toronto?
Well, the production of the movie was actually done in Toronto in 2016, and the premiere, of course, happened in Hollywood, which I was able to attend with the car and had a great time there. But the movie featured the xXx3 when it came out in 2017, did a great job of actually introducing the car, serving as a wonderful bridge between the storylines of xXx1 and xXx2. xXx1, of course, had Vin Diesel. XXx2 was with Ice Cube. And so the car actually serves a wonderful way of kind of bridging those two plot lines together of in XXx3.
Well, Tom, I want to thank you. I love your passion for this. I love these committed car guys where you know every facet of not only the car, the people who rode in it, the people who signed it, the people who made the movie. It's fascinating.
It's a labor of love.
It is a labor of love.
Truly love this opportunity. This has been part of my bucket list to have you drive this car.
Well, thanks. It's an honor. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for everything and your enthusiasm.
Thank you for having me on my show. But anyway, very good. So there you go. XXx, folks. Check it out.
Mm-hmm.